first one is one-way data binding. One-way data binding means data flows from your JavaScript. We also have a lightning input bound with value equals. Hi everyone, in this video we will dive into data binding and reactive properties in Lightning web components. We will cover what data binding means, the difference between one-way and two-way bindings, and the rules of reactivity in LWC. By the end, you will know how data flows in your components and how to build responsive UI. So what is data binding? Let's start with some definitions. Data binding means connecting your component's JavaScript data or properties to your HTML template so that when the data changes, the UI updates too. In LWC, this is done using the curly braces syntax in the template. So what is reactive properties in an LWC? So reactive properties are properties of your component class that when they change will automatically trigger the UI update. This is how LWC ensures your UI stays in sync with your data. Now let's take a look at the two types of data binding that can happen. The first one is one-way data binding. One-way data binding means data flows from your JavaScript to your HTML template but not automatically from the template back to your JavaScript. Now let's take a look at how one-way data binding works. In your class, you define a property and in your template, you refer to it using the property name. If you change the JS property, the UI reflects that change. But if the user interacts with the UI element, like typing in an input and changes something, that alone won't update the JS property unless you write code to do it. So why does this matter for beginners? It matters because it keeps your data flow predictable. When you see something in the UI, you know it's coming from the JavaScript. If you need updates from the UI back to the JavaScript, you will need to handle an event, and according to the official docs, the data binding between components for property value is one way. Now let's take a look at two-way data binding. Two-way binding means you build the component such that data flows from JavaScript to HTML and HTML flows back to JavaScript, and this will happen via some kind of user interaction. While LWC's core binding is one way by default, you can implement the two-way style behavior by binding the template element to the JavaScript properties and then handling UI events like onChange or onInput in the template, and inside the handler updating the JavaScript property, which will trigger a UI update again because the property has changed. In this example, you have an input field whose value is equal to the name property. You can attach an onChange event handler and the handler method as handle name change. So this handle name change method will be triggered whenever there is a change, and inside your JavaScript you can handle this event and extract the value from the target of where the event occurred and attach it to the name property. Now this will update the UI and the UI will show whatever name is, and when the user types, the name updates, so you and the model stays in sync. Now let's go through some of the important points quickly. LWC doesn't support automatic two-way binding in the sense of Angular or Vue where you just mark something and it wires both ways. It doesn't happen like that. You should manually listen to events and update properties, and only use two-way when needed, like inside forms, inside an interactive UI component, etc. Otherwise, keep one way for simplicity and clarity. Now let's talk about how reactivity in LWC works under the hood and some best practices and rules. A property used in the template is reactive. If its value changes, the template will update. For primitive types like string, number, boolean used in a template, you don't necessarily need to use the track decorator. LWC by default tracks individual fields. For complex types like arrays, objects, etc., you can either reassign the object or array when you update it, or you can use the track decorator property to make internal changes reactive. But best practice, use immutable updates. Data flows between parent-child components, which means property passing is one way, which is from parent to child. To send data back, which is from child to the parent, we can use events. Let's see some of the best practices in these scenarios. So we should prefer one-way data binding when you simply display data. Use two-way style only when you truly need UI changes to update data. Avoid putting complex logic in template expressions. Use JavaScript getters instead. Avoid mutating nested structures. Use new assignments for arrays or objects so that LWC can detect changes and re-render properly. Keep component data flow simple and predictable. Makes debugging easier. Now let's build a simple example component to illustrate both one-way and two-way bindings. So inside this component, we show the username in a p tag. So this will be our one-way communication between the JavaScript and the UI component. We also have a lightning input bound with value equals username property and the onChange handler. When the user types, handle name changes updates the username property and the UI updates immediately. That gives us the two-way style behavior. This way of writing code matches the guidelines. The JavaScript defines the data, the template binds to it, user input triggers the JavaScript JavaScript update, and the reactive property changes the UI. And the reactivity rule here is changing the username triggers re-render of the template where it's used. So to see this in action, I have already uploaded it and added into the account page. Let me do a quick refresh. And here you can see this is the one-way communication where the data is embedded in the JavaScript and we are seeing it in the UI. And for the two-way communication, when you make an input change in the input box, it updates the JavaScript, which gives us the two-way communication. Now let's summarize the key takeaways. Data binding connects your JavaScript class and your HTML template. One-way binding is the most common. Data flows from JavaScript to the UI. Two-way style binding is when you want UI changes to update the JavaScript properties. You use the event handlers plus property binding, which will give you the two-way style binding. As for a best practice, keep the data flow clear, simple, and predictable. So that is all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you found this useful, click the like, leave a comment with any questions about data binding in LWC, and share this with your fellow friends. See you in the next video. Thank you.